Upon this moment, we already discussed 6 factors that could shape how much sellers are willing and able to sell, okay, at various prices. Now we're gonna put them together, okay, and look at how TERNIP helps us figure out the difference between a change in quantity supplied and a change in supply. Okay, you may find again this part of the discussion will be very similar to what we did in the demand theory. Okay, which is the good news. All right, the difference here, the key is to look at the cause. Okay, what drives the change? If there's a change in the price of our good, delta P, again, delta means change, okay? Then we are supposed to change the quantity supplied as a result. On the graph, we're supposed to see a movement along the existing supply curve. If there's a change in any of the other 5 factors here, a change in technology or technological innovation, sellers' expectations on future prices, or the prices of related goods in production, or number of sellers, or the input cost, then we're supposed to change the supply because we're going to end up with a new relationship, okay, between the price and the quantity supplied. Now on the graph, we're supposed to shift the curve. Okay. Now let's do the same thing, the flow chart we already did with demand. Okay. So here let's do the supply. Okay. And as we said before, if the price changes, the price of our good changes, then we're supposed to change quantity supplied. Okay, QS. All right, and on the graph, we're supposed to see a movement along the curve. All right, if the price goes up, we're gonna move up along the curve. Vice versa, a lower price leads to a movement down along the curve. Okay. If any of these 5 factors change, then we're going to change supply, okay? Because we have the new relationship. So on the graph, we're supposed to see a shift, right? A shift of the supply curve. And once again, when we believe the sellers will supply more, we're gonna, so when supply goes up, we're gonna do a rightward shift of the supply curve. When supply goes down, we're gonna see a leftward shift. Okay, so this is pretty much consistent with what we discussed in demand theory. Okay, more means rightward shift, less means leftward shift. Okay, all right, now let's check out a very quick real-world example, okay, and see how powerful TERNIP is. Now, this is a map of the major coffee bean exporters around the globe. Okay, many of you are probably familiar with, Brazil and some other South American economies being the major coffee bean exporters, okay, because they have been that way for decades. But what's new to us, in the past 2 or 3 decades, was some of these Southeast Asian economies joining this market. Okay? They found that in terms of the climate, temperature, rainfall, soil, they're pretty close to Brazil and other South American economies. So they can, grow coffee beans in a pretty efficient way. And right now, you can find that the second largest coffee bean exporter is actually Vietnam. Okay, the third one is Indonesia. Again, you see multiple Southeast Asian economies on the list. Okay. Now here we give you the supply schedule. Okay, before entry and after entry, we're talking about the entry of these Southeast Asian economies. Okay, as you can see, we still look at these 7 different price levels. Okay, as low as 50 cents per pound, as high as $2. And these column before entry column is what we saw before. Okay, in when we talk about when we drive the supply curve. Okay, after entry, as you can see, at each possible price, okay, the quantity supplied increased. Okay, for example, when the price is 50 cents, the quantity supplied increased from 8 billion pounds to 9.6 billion pounds. Okay. And if we plot the new relationship between the price and the quantity, we would find S2 here. You find that, for each possible price, the new dot or new combination between the price and the quantity lies on the right-hand side of the previous one. Okay, so when we connect all of them, S2 lies on the right-hand side of S1. All right, now here, what we are doing is, if you follow that flow chart, it would be quite easy, because here, basically, we're saying that it's N, right, number of centers increases, okay, because we got more oil exporting countries. And that leads to an increase in supply, global supply of coffee beans, and then we're supposed to rightward shift the supply curve. That's exactly what this chart shows. Okay, and oops, I'm sorry. Let me move to the worksheet, and let's check out questions number 5 and number 6. Okay, and they will give us extra chances to practice TERNIP. Okay, now if you remember in the previous video, we said that here we're kind of working backwards. Okay, so we already get the graph. We already know this is a movement or a shift. We work backwards and figure out what drives this change. Okay, now number 5 says, in the above figure, the movement from point A to point B reflects. So here we already know that this is a movement. Okay, and in the TERNIP, we said a movement would only be caused by a change in price, right? Because it's actually, well, let me write it here. A movement shows a change in quantity supplied, which can only be caused by a change in price, right? So here, from A to B, we find that the quantity supplied actually increases, okay, and the price has to be higher because it becomes more profitable producing pizza, right? That's why they want to supply more. Okay, so here the answer is increasing the price of pizza, right? B says increase in the supply of pizza. Again, if this is true, we are supposed to say on the graph a shift, right? A rightward shift of the supply curve. It's not going to be a movement, so the B is not correct. Say an increasing number of producers of pizza, just like the coffee bean example we discussed. So if the number of producers rises, we're supposed to see an increase in supply. So there got to be a rightward shift of the supply curve, which is not, again, demonstrated in the graph. D, a decrease in the cost of tomato sauce used to produce pizza. All right, so here Oh, I forget to label here. This one is, the TERNIP thing here is number of centers. Okay, I'm sorry about that. And D here, the TERNIP is input cost. Okay, because the tomato sauce is used to produce pizza. So the input cost decreases. Okay, that means the profit margin, which equals the difference between the market price and the input cost, is going to be larger, right? So we can write this out. So the profit margin is higher. That means they're going to produce more. So the supply got to be higher, right? Remember here, I is part of the other 5 factors. So according to this, we would expect a rightward shift of the supply curve. That means this is not true, okay? Not consistent with the graph. Now, D, a decrease in income if the pizza is a normal good. This is about demand, right? It's not supply. But here, what we see is a supply curve diagram, okay, or graph. So there's nothing for us to make any judgment about the demand side, okay? So this is not the answer. All right, so this is number 5. Number 6, okay? Number 6, we are working from top to the bottom on that flow chart, okay? Because it tells us there's an increase in the cost of cheese used to produce pizza. Again, the turnip here is going to be the input cost, right? But in this case, input cost actually goes up, okay? That leads to a lower profit margin. So by producing each pizza, you can make less money, right? So the supply goes down, all right? And we're supposed to see a leftward shift of the supply curve. So let's look at these choices, okay? A, shift the supply curve from S to S1. Now on the graph, from S to S1, that is a leftward shift, okay? So this is the right answer. Shift the supply curve from S to S2, that means a rightward shift on the graph, right? That is not correct. Results in a movement from point A to B, that's C, or a movement from B to A, that is D, okay? Both are incorrect because we said here when the input cost change, we're supposed to shift the curve instead of moving along the original curve. E has no effect, of course, this is wrong. Okay. Now, here we already finished our discussion about supply theory. Okay. And we're gonna, in the next video, we're gonna start talking about the market equilibrium. Okay. Before that, I want to go back to the slides and briefly, mention these. Okay, and again, just another way to show you graphically the difference between a movement along the curve and the shift. Okay. I especially want to talk about this. The increase means rightward shift and decrease means leftward shift. This is consistent between the demand and the supply theories. Okay. Now, some of you, I found in the past that if you already got the econ background in high school, you tend to use move upward or downward. Please don't use these words because they are quite confusing. Okay, for example, here, when we say, when the curve shifts from S1 to S2, if you start with a specific quantity here, okay, and go up, you hit S2 first, and keep going up, you hit S1, probably, if we can extend it at this point. So it looks like S2 lies below S1, right? So you tend to say that, we shift the supply curve down. But remember, we are trying to show supply increases like this, right? So it's quite confusing. And vice versa here, you got to say we shift the supply curve up, but we actually mean the supply is going down. So please stay away from the upward or downward. Okay, you